right, so in this final setup lesson for the Mac OS operating system, I'm going to give you a quick tour of the datasets for this course and also show you the startup and shutdown process for Jupyter Notebook. So this is going to be the sequence of steps that you have to repeat each time you come back to the course on a new day and have to restart your coding environment, which is Jupyter Notebooks. So attached as a resource to this lesson, you should find a single file called pandas.zip. Now, if you're unfamiliar, the zip file format is basically just a compressed file format that allows you to pack a lot of things into a smaller file size. And the way that you can uncompress it to reveal what it's hiding is to simply double click it on a Mac, and it's going to open up to reveal a single folder. So I'm going to double click. There's going to be a pandas folder in here. And if I open up the pandas folder, you're going to see all of our data sets for the course. They're going to come in two flavors, in two different file types. The first is called CSV, which is short for comma separated values. This is basically a text file, and in the text file, each row of data is written on a separate line, and each value for that row is separated by a comma. That's why it's called a comma separated values file, because it's separating the data with commas. You don't have to worry about this too much right now. Just know that it is a very popular file format for storing data in a very simple text file. And then alongside those, we're going to have some Excel files right here with an XLSX extension. We're going to have some videos later in the course that show you how to work with Excel files in Pandas as well. All right, so we're going to be opening these up later in the course in Jupyter Notebook. The only recommendation I have for you here is whenever you're creating your Jupyter Notebooks, I strongly recommend you create them in the exact same directory as your datasets. Whenever you import any file in Pandas, by default, it's going to look for that file in the current directory, in wherever the file is. So if you place your code right next to your files, it's going to really simplify the import process. You could keep them separate, but that will only make things more complicated in case you move the code file or you move the data set. You have to navigate up and down directories and all of that complex stuff. Don't worry about it. Just put your code right next to your data sets in here, and that will simplify things a lot. Now, you don't actually have to keep your Pandas folder itself on the desktop. You can place it wherever you want, as long as you keep your Jupyter Notebook files in here alongside with your actual data sets. Okay, so next up, I want to show you the startup and shutdown process for a Jupyter Notebook. So we're going to begin with our terminal. I'm going to launch it with Command space, and that's going to bring up Spotlight Search. I can find terminal and launch that application. And again, this is going to be the sequence of steps that you're going to follow each time you're starting anew. So you're going to watch a couple of videos, follow along, shut down for the day, and then when you want to relaunch Jupyter Notebook, you're going to have to go through this exact same process. But it's not too complicated, and pretty soon it'll become muscle memory. So here we are launched into the terminal, and we are in our base environment in the Anaconda. And we, of course, want to activate the new one that we created in the previous lesson. I chose one called Pandas Playground, and if you ever forget what the names of your environments are, you can always execute conda info --envs, that is short for environments. It's going to give you a list of all of the environments as well as the currently active one. So again, as a reminder, to activate an environment, we use the activate command with conda. So conda activate, followed by the name, we want Pandas Playground. And of course, if you chose to give your environment a different name, just write the name right here. All right, so that's going to activate it. We can see it right here in parentheses. And now we are good to launch our Jupyter Notebook application. And it's going to be Jupyter, and Jupyter is spelled with a Y in the middle. So Jupyter, then a space, and then we have to write Notebook. Jupyter Notebook. So when I execute this, we're actually going to launch a new browser window. So we'll give it a second, and I'm going to drag it over here from my other screen. It's going to look a little bit like this, all right? And I just want to take a quick second to describe what's going on. If you don't understand everything, it's totally fine. But basically, we're running a local server on our computer. So this is not an actual web page on the internet. This is a server running on our computer that is sending us this web page and allowing us to do all kinds of things in this application. So the reason we need a server is because we need something that's running that's going to be taking our Python code, interpreting it, and giving us the result, right? We need something that's always running, that's listening for our commands, for our Python commands, understanding what we're telling it to do, processing it, and giving it back to us, and always have that running, right? And that's basically what the server allows us to do. So here on the left-hand side, we are running effectively a server, and it's always going to be running until we shut it down here from the terminal. So just because you close down this browser window does not mean that you shut down the server. There's a separate process to shut it down, which we'll talk about in just a second. So let's go ahead and blow this window up. Welcome to Jupyter Notebook. I can in fact make this a little bit bigger to make it easier to see. This is the primary interface for Jupyter Notebook. It's going to launch you into the exact same directory as where your terminal is in. So this is my central user folder. And as you just saw, I had my pandas files in a directory called pandas on my desktop. So my desktop is going to be right here. That's where I'm going to navigate. And of course, here I'm going to have that pandas folder, and I can click in there. And here we're going to see all of our data files. Here's my CSVs, here's my Excel, XLSX files, etc. So this is where we want to create our Jupyter notebooks throughout the course. All right, let's go ahead and create a sample notebook just so you get comfortable with the process. On the right-hand side, there's going to be a new button. You're going to click this, and here you're going to see under Notebook, Python 3. So what this means is create a new Jupyter notebook, and the language that it's going to be using is Python 3. All right, which is of course the foundational language on top of which the pandas library is built. Let's go ahead and open up this file. It's going to launch in a brand new tab. Up here, you're going to see it's going to be given a default name of untitled. We can change that simply by clicking into here. That's going to prompt us with this input box. We can give it some random name. It doesn't matter. We're going to delete this in just a second anyway. Let's call it test. Let's click rename. We're going to see it's going to change to test. So this is an example of a cell, and this is where we're going to be executing all of our code throughout the course. We're going to have many, many cells as we work through a notebook. So we're going to have a separate lesson later that's going to walk you through the Jupyter Notebook interface and all these shortcuts that are available here as well. But for now, let's just execute one super simple command, and this is just to prove to us that our server is working and that our Jupyter Notebook is receiving our command in Python, and then processing it and giving us back the result. So we can actually use Python to perform basic mathematical calculations. So for example, we can do 1 plus 1. In Python, you do addition with the plus sign, so I can write 1 plus 1. All right, and just because we've written it in a cell does not mean that it's been executed yet. In order to actually execute the cell, you want to hold the Shift key, and then as you're holding Shift, press Enter. And below the cell, you're going to see the output for that given cell of code. So this output for 1 plus 1 is going to be 2. And that's the exact way that the entire course is going to work. We're going to write a sample bit of code in a cell. Of course, eventually it's going to be pandas code dealing with data sets, and then we're going to see the output displayed below. And then as we work our way through a notebook, predictably you're going to have hundreds and hundreds of cells. All right, so let's now walk you through the shutdown process after you've watched a couple of videos and you're ready to shut everything down for the day. Couple steps you want to take. The first is you want to save your notebook. It does have some auto-save features, but it's always good to play it safe. You can save either with the keyboard shortcut Command S. That's a common one in most programs, Command S, or you can go to the File menu right here, File, and click Save and Checkpoint. And you can see right here, it'll tell you last checkpoint a few seconds ago, it's been saved, right? Now, once it's been saved, you can close this tab, which is going to have the notebook. Now, just because you've closed the tab does not mean that the notebook has been formally shut down. You're going to see it appear here, by the way, alongside our CSV files. You can see we called it test. It's going to have the file extension IPYNB. That is short for IPython Notebooks, which was actually the name of the application before it became Jupyter Notebooks. So first it was called IPython Notebooks, and that's where the file extension came from. And then they changed the name to Jupyter Notebooks, but the file extension stayed the same in order to support older files, right? So that's why it has this file extension, but it's effectively the extension for a Jupyter Notebook, right? So our file is named test. IPYNB extension. You can see here with this green book, what that's telling you is that it's active, that it's running. So we haven't actually closed down or shut down this notebook. And that's not to be confused with shutting down the server, which we'll talk about how to do in just a second. So before you close the browser window, you want to go to this running tab right here. And under this running tab, it's going to have a list of all notebooks that are currently live or active or in memory, right? So you can think of this as almost being like a Word document that's open that you need to shut down before you close down the application. So on the right-hand side, you're going to see this shutdown button. You can click it, and that is going to completely shut down the file and remove it from memory. All right, so make sure you save the file first, then close the tab with the file. In this main Jupyter Notebook interface, go to the Running tab, find all your notebooks that you have running, and shut them down for the day. Once that is done, you can feel free to quit the notebook. You can either press quit up here or just close the browser at this point. All right, so that closes down the notebook and the browser, but we still have a server running here. And we have to remember to shut it down, otherwise it's gonna be running in the background. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. It's not like it's gonna consume a lot of memory or anything, but you wanna make sure you shut it down just to kind of tie up all your loose ends. So the way that's gonna work is you're going to use this shortcut, Control-C. In fact, you have to press it twice in a row because the first one asks to shut it down and the second is a quick confirmation. So if you quickly tap and hold Control and then press C twice, it's going to shut it down and bring it back to your terminal. You can tell here by the $sign. You can see we're still here in the Pandas Playground environment. That's totally fine. At that point, you've shut down your notebook, so you are good to close the terminal. And that is it. And so the next time you want to resume watching the videos, you go through the exact same process. Open up your terminal, activate whatever environment you want. For me, it's going to be Pandas Playground. I'm going to assume you named it the same. Then you're going to execute Jupyter Notebook to launch the Jupyter Notebook. Then you're going to navigate to the directory that has your Pandas directory, which is going to have all of your data sets as well as the IPython notebooks related to them. Here we have our test one. In fact, we don't need it, so I'm going to delete it right here. But you're going to have all your data sets here, and you can either create a new one in the Jupyter Notebook interface or open up an existing one from that view. And then you're going to have all those cells. You're going to execute the code as you watch alongside the videos and see me do it. Then you're going to save the notebook, close the tab, go to the Running tab and shut down the notebook, close the browser, and then finally shut down the server in your terminal. I know it's a lot of steps, but it's kind of sequential and linear, so hopefully it should make quick sense and it'll become very autonomous and automatic pretty quickly. All right, and that completes the entire setup process for our Mac systems. We have our data sets, we have the capacity to launch Jupyter Notebooks, we have a separate, isolated, powerful Anaconda environment, and we are ready to join back up with our Windows folk and start learning the ins and outs of Jupyter Notebook, and of course follow that up with the exploration of Pandas, which I trust you'll grow to love very dearly by the end of this course. All right, so it's been a pleasure, and I will see you in the next lesson.